Hey there, Kim. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much, Andrea, for having me. How are you?
I am really well. My word for today was, I look at kind of a word that I want to embody each day. Today was eager. And part of that was like, I am eager to get to know Kim. And, and what that means is I'm really looking forward to it. And then you hopped on the video and said, the Zoom call, and you said, I was so looking forward to this. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
I agree.
So before we get started, there are people in my audience, listeners, that may not know anything about you. So why don't I let you give us a little bit of background, kind of how you landed where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was going to be the first woman president of the United
Okay.
States. That was my plan. And
Well, it hasn't happened yet. So
no, and I've got time.
you've
I'm
got
young enough.
time.
I'm younger than the current president, so we're okay. But then I didn't think that a husband and kids would play into that because I knew the direction I needed to take, what I needed to do, and I had my life laid out. But I knew that if I was ever going to marry, he had to have two things. He had to be over 6 foot tall. We talked about that because just like your short mom married a short
Yep.
man, my short mom married a short man, and I wanted to give my kids a fighting chance at some height. And so, and I wanted him to be good looking. So he'd look good in my wedding pictures because,
There you go.
that's a priority. So I thought very
Yeah.
deep, back then. And one day, May of my senior year in high school, this tall, dark, handsome man came into the room and swept me off my feet. And 10 days later, I asked him to marry me and he said yes. We got married a little less than a year later. Yeah, I know, crazy, right? And
Ah,
then I started my first business right out of high school. And I've been in business my whole life and love business and eat, drink, breathe it. And I've had lots of different businesses over the years. I run a nonprofit organization and I have lots of children, 5 of them,
okay.
and 11 grandchildren. And
Oh,
I love running my nonprofit, I love life. And I've written a couple books.
mhm.
And then life took a strong U-turn.
Mm,
I thought I was going to grow old with this guy that I
mm,
was madly in love with from the beginning and loved
mm.
all the way through. And I was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer a few years ago. Sorry about your mom, by the way.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
breast cancer stinks.
It
Any
does.
cancer.
It does.
Yes. Yeah. 4 months later, my husband was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer
Ah,
and he passed away 6 weeks after that.
yeah, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Having
Well,
worked in the cancer industry, I mean, I hate to call it that way, cancer research, when anybody says the cancer word, it's like I've learned to steel myself because I never know what kind it is, right? I never know if it's one that, oh yeah, that one you just live with for the rest of your life and it's just going to be. And then, but I started off in brain cancer, and many of those are like similar to pancreatic, where some people, have several years after pancreatic, but many are like your husband and they're just gone. And I am sorry for your loss as well.
yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I thought we were going to be those 95-year-old people sitting on
Yeah.
the porch, in rockers drinking lemonade and smiling
Mm.
at each other or whatever it is that 95-year-old people do on the porch with lemonade. And all of a sudden, I had this different life and I had to figure it out. And one of the things that happened is I questioned love, the real meaning of love. And so I decided I was going to take a year and go on a quest to figure it out. And so that has become a big part of where I'm at today and what I'm doing today.
Well, and I don't know if you pitched me or I pitched you, or either way, when we connected to talk about this, and I read that it said you'd taken a whole year to discover what love is. I'm like, well, that's an interesting quest. And then I saw that you had kind of walked through 1 Corinthians 13. And for our listeners who don't know what that is, it's just one of St. Paul's letters in the New Testament scriptures. And it is just a chapter that talks about what love is and what it isn't. And so I know that we are going to have a guest speaker series where you can teach us a lot, and you may walk us through that book then. But I'm happy to hear just a little bit about kind of what you learned and how that influences what you do today and who you work with.
Sure. Yeah. So I did. I used 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, love is kind, does not envy, does not boast. One of the first things I learned is that there are 14 is's and isn't of love. So it took me a little bit longer than a year. But I decided I would take one word a month and figure out what is love that is patient? What is love that is kind? And most of the time I was in Haiti when I was working on it. And it was crazy. I was chased by a motorcycle gang. I got lost on a mile-high mountain with a medical student. I mean, I slept outside with snakes and tarantulas and whatever. And so I just write about that, about what I learned, what I think I'm going to learn that month, and then what I actually learned that month. And so and it definitely has changed my life and shaped the way I lead, shaped the way I do business, shaped everything, shaped my life. And love is patient, right from the get-go. I thought that'd be easy. We all know what patience is, right? We're not stomping our foot when we're ready to go, when our 6-year-old can't find his shoes, or whatever. And, but I figured out that you put love is or love is not in front of any word and it changes in meaning. So love that is patient. And I believe you're supposed to love everybody. Like that's just the way to live. You should just love everybody. And love that is patient would say that this is the most important moment of your life. That what's in the past is in the past and what's in the future is yet to come. This is the most important moment. So be fully present in the moment that you're in. And I'll tell you, as an entrepreneur and a mother of 5 and a crazy person with a crazy schedule, I had a hard time with this. I really had to practice it because I thought that I could be in conversation with you, Andrea, while thinking about a meeting I had later, what I was going to get from the grocery store, who needed to get to soccer practice, right? And not be fully engaged and not really hear. And then hear in a way that I assumed what you were going to say, or because of a label I put on you, or whatever.
Yeah.
But when I practiced and practiced and practiced and got to the point where I was fully engaged, fully present, loving with love that is patient, my ears opened up and I heard things I never would hear before. And it's amazing when you really listen to somebody, the things that you hear. And to show that kind of love, that authentic love shows that you care. And so with staff and with customers, I mean, who doesn't want to work with somebody who's authentic and truly cares about them?
Well, we hear this phrase, people just want to be heard. And a lot of times we think, well, if I just sit here and be quiet while they're talking, they're heard. Well, no. And then I think, okay, well, I'll add to that. I'll reflect back to them what they said. And that's a start. But this is just beautiful. It's like, oh, I need to read your book. Because this, to even just say that it taught you so much about being present and understanding what people were saying and understanding where their heart was coming from. I loved the phrase, my ears were open to things I'd never heard before. How many of us do that? I mean, even it makes me think I need to stop rushing my husband. I need to stop because I know where he's going, right? It's like I have things to do. And so this is all of a sudden, it's like, okay, this was a good teaching moment. I'm just going to sit here and listen.
Yeah, well, it is amazing when you're not thinking about the next thing you're going to say, right? What your rebuttal is, or stop people short or whatever. And there are times when you're so busy that it's hard to stop in the middle of the grocery store and take that 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever for a conversation. So then it's okay to say, I want to listen to what you really have to say. Like, I really want to be there. Right now, it doesn't work. Can I call you later, or let's get together later and make a plan for when you can be fully engaged.
Well, and that gives people the opportunity to understand a little bit about where your boundaries are, right? Because I'm sure many of us are hearing, oh, but I can't just stop in the middle of doing everything and listen to everything because I'm on a schedule. That's why I'm thinking ahead and trying to make you go faster. But that gracious understanding of being able to say, this is my boundary line today, but I have other time that I can give you and that I would love to devote to you. And that is a very gracious thing to do as well. That's beautiful.
Yes. And it's good.
Yeah.
I mean, love we think of as as something that maybe we don't bring into business, or, but we do. We don't hang it up in the coat closet when we get to work, or the closet when we get home, or anywhere else. It embodies you. It's who you are. It's
Yeah.
not just an emotion like fear. We don't live in fear.
Right.
We do live in love. But God is love. John says God is love.
Yeah.
Not that God loves, but he is love. So it's something that you are, not something that you do.
So I'm going to go down a slight tangent here really quick based on what you just said. Many of us have been in environments and communities where we quote things like God is love, but what we end up living out is we live in fear of someone imposing something on us, fear of having to comply with something that we don't want to, fear of somebody doing something that we think is wrong. How do you speak to people in those moments or in those communities where we actually have those scriptures in front of us, and a lot of times we don't live them because we're already conditioned to live in fear?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to a misunderstanding. Like, we live with these common myths about love. And so we misunderstand a lot. And when you get the understanding, it's a way easier, freer way to live than you realize. But there are times when love means walking away. So if you are in a relationship that is bad for you, where you're being abused, or it's just a negative relationship, it's a bad relationship, walk away. The most loving thing you can do is walk away. Because if you stay, you're enabling the person to continue that behavior. So you don't have to live in fear of, do I have to stay? No, you don't. You don't have to stay or live in any kind of fear, because fear is bad. Fear eats away at us, right?
Right.
Like,
It's corrosive.
yeah, it is. It is so corrosive, and it takes over our
Yeah.
lives. But instead, live in victory, live in triumph, live in the now, live in and waking up every morning and grabbing the day.
Yeah.
It's your day to control. It's your day to decide what you're going to do today.
So, as far as what you do, like when you say you're an entrepreneur, do you work with individuals on any of this stuff? What kind of work do you do, and how do you pull this into that work?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for years I owned buildings and leased space, and I had a golf course, and I had banquet
Okay.
facilities, and I had a grocery store and whatever, but I've sold most of my businesses so that this is my full-time focus, because I'm so passionate about the things that I learned and know that it is life-changing. And so I am a love coach. And so I am doing that. And that's going great. It's been really fun and really productive. Like, marriages have been saved and families
Okay.
closer together and things like that. So that's been great. I write. I've got 2 books going right now. I'm writing a book on grief with a medium, which has been very interesting and so fun. And because grief, I think, is another thing that's misunderstood. And I'm writing Love Is for Kids. And so I think that's fun. And speaking. And yeah, I
Okay.
love what I'm doing now. Yeah, definitely a shift, but it's still a business.
Your plate is full.
My plate is full. I like a full plate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like I heard somebody say, I like how full my plate is right now. It's like it could probably take a little more, but I like it. It's in a good spot. So if, as a love coach, you work with couples, families, who do you work with?
Yeah, mostly individuals.
Okay.
Mostly individuals, because of it only takes one person to change a relationship,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it. And so mostly I work with individuals or in group sessions. And so it's interesting. Sometimes people will end up bringing in a spouse or in a family member, just whatever. But there's enough that you can learn and figure out in your life as an individual. It starts as an individual. I mean, you got to love yourself. And we talk about that, right? Like, people talk about that, self-love.
Absolutely.
But where do you go with that? And how does that happen? And we still compare ourselves. And as women, we can be so hard on ourselves. We're supposed
Mm.
to weigh a certain amount and look a certain way. And but then I think about the Mona Lisa.
Mm.
And if it ever went up for sale, I don't know how many millions and millions and millions of dollars, right, that somebody would pay for the Mona Lisa. Well, it's because it is a one of a kind masterpiece. And so are you. There is nobody who's ever been exactly like you. There's nobody who ever will be exactly like you. You are created to be who you are. Live who you're created to be and embrace it. Look at the mirror and like it. Like who you are,
Mm.
and love yourself for being this incredible, unique individual. You're the only one.
Yeah.
You are the only one. So embrace it. Embrace how beautiful that is, your uniqueness. And you look the way you're supposed to look.
Mm.
And you are who you're supposed to be. And just embrace it and love yourself first.
And, even as in leadership, when I talk to people, it's like the first person you lead is yourself. The first person you love is yourself. The first person you change is yourself. And I love that. I don't know if you, like me, as a coach, we learn as we go as well, right? It's like we know we learn enough, we have enough, we understand enough to start helping other people. But the more I work with people, the more I grow. Have you found that to be the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like you can't outgive,
Yeah.
like you think you're serving, you think you're helping, whatever, but what you get in return is
Mm.
more than what you can ever give. And
Yeah.
there's just this weird thing in our universe that's how it happens. You just can't outgive.
It's like keeping the faucet on while you're ladling it out. It actually works.
So true. I like that.
Yeah. So let's shift back to young Kim. Knowing that you proposed at 17, started your first business at 18. How early can we go for an earliest leadership memory? What does it look like? What did you look like in that leadership space as a young girl?
Well, I uh, had a bad habit, good habit, I don't know what it was, but of joining something and end up being the leader of it.
Okay.
So I was class president and National Honor Society president and whatever president I could be and whatever leadership position I could take or start something new in school. And I just, not that I was bossy, it wasn't a bossy leadership. It was just, let's get it done. Okay, we got to build a homecoming float. Yeah, I'll take that on. We can get it done. Let's work together and get it done. And so
Okay.
it's just always been a part, I guess, of me.
So is that something that you feel like was celebrated in your family? So that, I mean, because for instance, nowadays, when you're not working in a team, a lot of times people say, like, I have a son who's very much that. When he was younger, he would do table work and they would say, yeah, he wants to lead or be someplace else. He wants to take over. And it's like, is he being bossy? Well, not really. He's just leading the group. And it's like, I don't understand. You're talking to a leadership coach. I don't understand why this is a problem. Um, did you find that, especially, and just I'm going to go here, did you find that, especially as a woman, that was celebrated in your family and community, or were you accused of being bossy?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, yes, certainly accused at times of being bossy, no doubt about it. And I think the younger you are, the harder it is for adults to look at you as a leader and recognize that and celebrate that.
Mm.
Because it's, you're this kid. Like I have a son, my son who's a cancer researcher.
Mm-hmm.
He got in trouble at school all the time because justice was his thing. If he thought
Mm.
somebody was being treated unfairly, man, he was going to step in. He didn't
Ah,
care who he had to talk to.
we have
He talked to the
similar
teacher.
sons. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you are 8 years old,
Mm.
that doesn't go over well.
Right.
But it is an incredible trait to have. It's a wonderful person to be as you get older and you mature into it. And
Right.
I think leadership is that same way. Is, when you're in kindergarten and you're leading what's going on the playground, you're bossy. But
Yeah.
then as you get older, you're a leader.
Okay. Do you feel like that is something that has kind of shaped your mindset and gave you the ability to start your first business at 18?
Yeah, well, I think so. I mean, I think I've just always had confidence. My parents never said you can't do something. You're not able, you're not equipped, you're not able to, you're not physically able mentally able or whatever, like whatever I wanted to do, I could do. And so uh, they gave me the confidence
Mm.
to be able to go and start a business when I was 18 years old.
What
And
was that business?
well, I bought an old building, an old furniture manufacturing building.
At
And
18.
at 18, yes, with my brothers, we were going to do it as a way to pay for college. We thought,
Okay.
well, I'll buy this old building for nothing because it'd been abandoned and empty.
Hmm.
And we'll buy it for a song and then lease space, and then it can pay for college. Well, it did for my oldest brother. It paid for his undergrad and veterinary school.
Mm.
And my other brother and I decided, maybe business is our thing. And so we just sold that building, bought a bigger one, bought more buildings, and that was our
Wow.
first business.
So that's what you did. That's you just have been, once you started on that path, you knew that was where you want to go.
Hmm. Yeah.
Impressive.
Yeah.
I don't know how many 18, 20-year-olds know but you have the experience, right? You had the evidence that you needed.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It worked. And, we were looking at it and looking at the numbers and going, wow, we're making good money. Like if we
Mm.
go to college and we get a job, uh, where are we going to make more money?
Hmm.
Are we going to be more successful? Like, what is it going to add to our lives? Is it going to make a difference? And so I went to college for a short time. I never got a degree,
Hmm.
but I sure got lots of degrees in life
Oh,
and
yeah.
through learning, right? Hands-on learning.
Well, and I talked to women. I mean, when I was a supervisor, I would talk to women and say, well, I don't have a college degree. It's like, you're 50 years old, you've raised 4 children, you've run basically the offices of 5 to 12 doctors at any one given time. So you know all about project management, you know all about leadership, you know all about skill development, you know how to feed people. You have skills that you don't even realize you have. And to be able to recognize all of that and say, yeah. But then, of course, you even had your businesses. So you had all of that.
Right, right. Yeah. And I think so often people go, and I'm pro college, I'm pro learning, constantly learning. I'm not anti that at all. It just is what happened in my life. But when you are learning and growing all the time, it's something to me that should never stop. Like John Maxwell, I know you're a
Mhm.
fan. I'm a big fan. I've read every book that has ever come out with his name on it. And I love all business books, love devouring business books and seminars and, learning from other people and learning as you go. And it's just, life is a university.
It is. And it's like you say, I don't know why I don't know why we feel compelled as women to say, I'm not anti-college. And part of it, my son hits high school next year. And so it's like, are you starting down this path or that path? And I think what I'd like to say is I'm pro doing what you need to do.
Mhm.
And I'm pro you figuring out what you need to figure out. I can see the ways that I can now see, looking back, the ways that college lays the path for you in certain areas, but I can also see where college prohibits or inhibits you in other areas because it puts certain mindsets in you that you think you have to do things a certain way. Whereas as an entrepreneur, you're going to figure those things out.
Right.
You're
Right.
going to figure those things out. You're going to become a problem solver. You're paying your way from day one. Nobody's paying for you. So I think I would love for the conversation, especially because I guess now I'm a mom of a teenager, to really be more of, and I'm just going to go ahead with your love and say, or your word and say, it's more love oriented and say, go back to that unique person that you've been created to be. And let's see who that person needs to be and what path that person needs to be on. Because we're still in a society that says, this is the road, get on it. If you get off it, we don't know what to do with you. Right.
It's so true. Right. Right. And it's led us to some things that aren't great, like the trades. Like we need
Oh,
people in the trades. We need people who are doing things that don't take a college degree, that you go and apprentice, whatever. And that could be somebody's passion.
mm-hmm,
But yeah, I think as parents, we can be so good sometimes at saying, oh gosh, you're good at math. You should really be an engineer. Or you're good with people. You need to be in communications or, and
mm-hmm,
try to steer our kids, or you shouldn't do this. Anytime we say you shouldn't, right? Or that's
mm-hmm.
not going to you're not going to make enough money at that. yeah, you're a great artist, but you're not going to make money. How are you going to make money at that? What does that mean? The music
Mhm.
industry, right? I mean, you were involved in that.
I was.
Yeah. And it's like
And
follow your dream, right?
yeah, and I think for me, a lot of that was, it wasn't so much that I needed to be in the music industry. It was that I needed to follow my inner voice, right? I needed to say, who am I? And I needed to be a little different because I had been very practical all the way up through. I was a nursing major my first 2 years. I was talking to a guy yesterday about this. His wife is now a nurse down here at UVA. And I was a nursing major for 2 years and realized, what am I doing? I can't poke people with a needle. I can't do this. And I don't want to be on my feet 24/7, work. I just, no, it's not for me. And I just ejected completely. And because I loved music and that was a passion, I still ended up with a practical BBA, right? A business administration degree. So I got my economics and statistics and all that kind of stuff, which served me well when I realized, yeah, the music industry, not for me. That's a whole other animal. But being able to say, all right, so I do have some experience in these areas, and taking the 22, 23-year path through university, medical administration and operations gave me a better understanding of who I am. Sometimes we need to learn what we're not. And sometimes we need to learn what we are, and both are just as valuable.
Mhm. And you might not know when you're 18 years old,
I did not.
right?
I did not have that
You.
awareness. I
Yeah.
have, Kim, how many times do we look back? You're not. I mean, I can't imagine you would say this, but the word I would love, have always wanted to use, well, I'm just a late bloomer, you know?
Right.
And it's like, the reality is, if you garden at all, every flower blooms exactly when it's supposed to,
Mhm.
right? A crocus doesn't bloom in September unless you have a frost in July. I mean, then it might bloom, but a crocus blooms in the snow in March. That's when it's supposed to bloom. And apples fall from the tree in the fall. I mean, that's just what happens. And to quantify and to relativize my or your experience and journey based on what is a standard is, I think, what gets us in so much trouble.
I think that that's true. I love that analogy because it's so spot on. I often think we've got all these books on babies and on toddlers, right? And terrible twos, whatever, and then on adolescents and teens. But then we kind of stop.
Yes.
But what about a book about your 20s, how to get through
Mhm.
your 20s? What about a book on your 30s, your 40s?
Mhm.
Every year is different. Every decade's different. I
Yeah.
look back to my 20s and it was great. I mean, it's a blur because I had all these kids. So it's a bit of a blur, but that was way different than my 30s, and my
Yeah.
40s were way different than that. And we hopefully are evolving and changing,
Sure.
my belief system, even
Oh, yeah.
things that I believed when I was 25 years old compared to what I believe now has changed and shifted.
Mm,
We need to give each other the grace to do that and
right.
say, in our Father's Day, our grandfather's day, you'd pick a job
Mm,
at 18, 20 years old, right? And you'd retire from that job.
mm. Yeah.
We have more freedom in that now.
Yeah.
It used to be if you were 45 years old and you were applying for a job, you're too old. They don't want to hire a 45-year-old. They don't want to hire a 50-year-old. They want to hire somebody that's going to be there for 30 years.
Yeah.
Well, nobody's there for not nobody, but
Yeah.
people don't operate that way so much anymore.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to evolve. And so we need to give each other that grace and realize it's all right to
Yeah.
change your thinking and change what you want to do. It's
Yeah, I
good.
participated in a LinkedIn thread this morning, and it was so at the time of this recording, the New Zealand Prime Minister has decided to step down, and Marie Kondo has changed her thinking and said, "Oh, I'm messy now because I have children." And people are giving them flack, giving these women flack. And the question in the thread was, "Why is this? Why are you giving them flack? Right? Why do you do this?" And for me, as a quote unquote late bloomer and somebody who's been terrified to make a real decision because I'm going to make it wrong, that I am an example of why this thinking is so detrimental. Now, granted, I'm blooming exactly when I'm supposed to bloom. I have wisdom now as a coach I would never have had earlier. But my thought concept in that whole conversation was, we are in a system of thinking that exactly what you said, that we're supposed to make a decision and stick with that, as if we can just decide and then go and then never change our minds. And so therefore it becomes crippling to, it's monumental to make it, and then crippling to say, I think I need to change my mind. And we don't give each other the ability to do that. And I think this circles all the way back to loving. It's not just that it's patient, but it's kind, and it doesn't keep a record, and all of those things.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And all of those things are different and all work together.
Mm,
And so, when you realize what each one of those things mean, the 14 things that are all so unique and all way different than what I thought that they were going to be, and then see this beautiful umbrella that goes over the
mm,
whole thing
yeah.
and dispel some of the myths that we're taught, because we are taught myths about
Yeah.
love, just like we're taught myths about other things. And it's okay to figure it out on your own. No,
Mm.
you don't have to necessarily go to Haiti for a year to figure it out, but it's okay to explore and figure it out and evolve and change.
Mm.
And so if we want to do that ourselves, we have to let others do that too.
Yeah. It's that relative principle. It's like, if I want you to change, then I have to be willing to change. And if I'm not willing to change, I can't ask you to do it. Right.
Mhm.
I love that. So through all of this, and in talking about change, and in talking about being able to do what we need to do and become that unique person, and understanding what love is, that I loved that beautiful umbrella that you talked about. Is there one leadership principle that helps you step into all of that every day?
Yeah, well, I would say one of the biggest things I learned about love, one of the biggest myths, is people will say it's a two-way street. Love is a two-way street. It's not. Love's
Mm.
a one-way street. You
Okay.
you don't control anybody but yourself, right? Love is something you are and you give, period. If you give it to get it back, that's not love. If I give you money and you give me a pair of jeans, that's a transaction. If I
Mm.
give you love to get love, that's a transaction. Love is not a transaction. You have these babies, right? And you
Mm.
bring them home from the hospital, you have total control. You decide when they eat, you decide when they go to bed, you decide when they have a bath. And then 6, 7, 8 months later, all of your Tupperware is out of the cupboards and pots and pans are banging around. And you
Mhm.
realize you have lost total control and you will never get it back again
Yeah.
because you don't control anybody but yourself.
Mm.
So, in that, living that way, recognizing that it's up to me to live the way I live, regardless of how somebody else is treating me, regardless of how somebody else is living. Like that's up to them.
Mm.
I don't control that. And if I have these expectations of this returned love, returned respect, returned to anything, that you set yourself up for disappointment and heartache and loneliness.
Right.
Just it it's on you. Take 100% responsibility of yourself. It is on you. The way you react. You have choices, right? Like you can be in a traffic jam, two people in the same traffic jam, and one guy's honking the horn, yelling out his window, screaming, blood pressure rising. In the very next car, somebody's going, Andrea Johnson has this great podcast. I think I'll just listen into that. I'm stuck here anyway. I might as well do something great. And
Yeah.
so you get to pick. You get to pick. Don't let other people determine how you respond.
Mm.
Don't let other people raise your blood pressure. They're not in control of you, just like you're not in control of them.
Right.
And so just live your life, do what you're supposed to do.
Mm.
And so with leadership in business, it's the same thing. That just don't make everything a transaction. Realize that people are who they are and can do what they want to do. And you may like it, you may not,
Yeah.
but you don't control it. You don't control it, but you do control yourself.
Um, yes, we control ourselves. Um, most of the time, right? And that's what I kind of, how, if I ever like have a moment where I've done something that I wanted, regretted, or needed to apologize for, I look at my son and I say, this was an issue where I did not control myself. And he goes, yeah, really? Like, okay, the gracious thing to say is, it's okay, mom, I forgive you. I said, then we can have a conversation.
Right.
Sorry, that my mind just went there when you said that. So knowing this and understanding that love, and I love the way you put that, love really is a one-way street. It really, there is no there is no necessarily, there shouldn't be an expectation of receipt back from that. So, in order to do that, in order to remember that every day, do you have a habit or ritual that you practice that kind of helps keep you in that mindset?
Why, I just, I'll tell you, with everything, the more you practice it, the more it becomes second nature, the more
Okay.
it becomes part of your nature, right?
Hmm.
And so I've been doing this for a minute. And so I see people differently now than I did before I did this whole thing.
Yeah.
And I see them as beautiful, unique people who can be who they're designed to be, who they're created to be, and realize that there might be other ways to do things besides my own, and people might look at something different than I look at it. And so I think communication is a big part of that. Like if there's something that's said or done and I wonder why they did it that way, instead of being upset about it or thinking, why didn't they listen to me or why didn't they, do it exactly the way I wanted? I ask, what made you
Yeah.
think of doing it that way? What made you, come up with, I want to hear your reasoning, your thinking,
Mm,
and communicate. Because that's another thing love does, is
yeah.
doesn't hang on to stuff, but talk about it.
Yeah. Well, if somebody is interested in, because on this show we talk about green flags, right? Red flags are things that we see and it's like immediate stop. But green flag we see, and we're not taught this well, but it should be an immediate go. If someone were seeing certain things in themselves, for, I don't know, maybe practicing this love on a better regular basis, or becoming an entrepreneur or something. I don't know which angle you want to take it from, but what would be some green flags that they would look for in themselves to be able to, I don't know, act differently, do something differently?
Well, I think so often we're in our heads.
Mm,
We're just in our heads, and that's where we live. So we're
mhm.
looking for, is it practical? Am I going to be able to eat tomorrow? We look at the nuts and bolts of things, but our gut tells us a lot.
Mhm.
And if you like, quite often I'll just sit on something, and I'll think, well, if I do that, how will I feel? And try to put myself in that position. If I don't do that, how will I feel? And put myself in that position. And that is a great way to determine, for me, whether I walk forward in something or don't walk forward in something.
Okay.
Because a lot of times there's internal nudges that are saying, do it, do it, do it. And we ignore that. And then
Mm,
later go, why didn't we do it, do it, do it?
mm,
Right. Or don't do it. And we ignore that.
mm.
So, listening to your gut, I think is a good way to go. Be open to hear what your body has to say.
Yeah, we are not taught much about listening to our bodies. We are taught to ignore our bodies. That's another piece of our society that I think that's another myth that, you could even call it a love myth. I'm not supposed to love my body. I'm supposed to tame my body. I'm supposed to control my body. I'm supposed to, subdue my body. So that can fall. I don't know if that does fall into one of your love myths, but, I can see how it most certainly would.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and if you think about it, it carries over into every area of life. Like right now I'm writing this book on grief,
Mm,
and different people grieve different ways. And in Haiti, man, people wail. They wail and weep and walk down the street together and follow the
mm,
coffin to the cemetery, and everybody is wailing and letting it out. Well, in certain societies in the U.S., we kind of frown on that. We would say get some control, or do it alone. We don't want to see it,
right.
whatever. But it's because we're conditioned to think that we should act a certain way in everything.
Mm,
And so instead, listen to yourself and how you should act and
yeah.
figure it out. And realize that if it's okay with you, it's okay, period.
Mm, okay. That's helpful to kind of like look inside and to say, this is where I need to go. Before we close it out, in looking on your website, I see that you have like a love challenge and you have a newsletter. Is there something that if somebody wanted to get started following you or paying attention, or, get your book, but before you start reading the book, maybe look at this, what is a good place to start?
Yeah, I think the love challenge is good. I mean, it's right on my website. It's 14 days. So it's 14 different little things
Ah,
to read, one each
okay.
day. that just give you something to think about
Okay.
love, a different aspect of love.
All right.
And if you join that on my website, I will send you for free a WWLD, what would love do?
Okay.
Because if you can answer any question that way, you're going to be doing the right thing.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah. So, and what we'll do is we will put the Love Challenge link in the show notes so that people can just click on it right where they are, and as they're listening to this podcast, and they can jump in there. It looks really good. I might have to take it on myself. Before we go, is there anything I didn't ask?
Well, I mean, I think you and I could talk all day. I wish
We
you lived
could.
next door. We could go out for coffee. I think you covered a lot. I mean, I think the biggest thing is be who you are created to be. Give yourself the freedom. Give yourself the freedom to be who you're created to be, and give yourself grace when you take a wrong turn, or maybe you could have made a different decision. Give yourself grace. Don't beat yourself up, and just tomorrow's another day. Today's another day. Let it be like that. And just be who you're created to be, not who society thinks you should be.
That just sounds so succinct. I'm just going to do that. But y'all listening, I know you know that is a lifelong journey. And Kim, you have been through it for a long time, and you've been working on it a long time. And I have been working on it. And I think we both share our journeys well. So we will definitely talk more. We will be having a live the week after this podcast airs. And so for those of you paying attention, if you want to hear more, you can just follow, and you'll hear it then. And we'll get even more detail from you. But before we close out, for sure, I would love to know, is there something that you can always be optimistic about, even when everybody else thinks you're crazy?
Yeah, life, actually. I mean, right now we're in this time of people are worried about their investments, their 401ks, worried about the economy, worried about whatever. And worry is kind of a silly thing, because it eats away at you, just like bitterness, like other things that can just eat away at your fear, but realize that there's way more good in the world than there is bad. There's way more people that think like you do than don't. It's one of the things about really listening. You realize we're a lot more the same than we are different. And life is good. Look for the good in life. Every day, there are good things that happen around you, every single day. And sometimes it can be so easy to focus on the bad, but focus on the good. Life is good. You get up, you get to breathe, right?
Yeah.
You get to walk, you get to see outside, whatever it is you get to do that day, you get to do it. You get to do it. So
Yes.
be optimistic about the future.
Yes. Be hopeful. Yes. This is fabulous. I can't wait to talk to you some more. And I am so glad we got to meet. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You're fabulous. And everybody should have your podcast at the top of their podcast list. It is so
I'm going to use you for my next promo. Thanks, Kim.